the idea behind this lab session is really to kind of start to introduce some of the kind of the programming concepts which are kind of out there at the moment. I typically program quite a lot in Python and also in SQL. And I use a tool called Visual Studio Code, which you may have heard of. And it's kind of what a lot of the programmers use. And what I aim to do in this kind of hour-long session is trying to give a kind of real high-level overview of what you can do really quite quickly if you've also got something like Claude in your back pocket. So it really kind of helps you kind of get going fast. If I personally reflect on my experience of programming, I used to buy these big textbooks like years ago, and I used to actually just take them on holiday. I remember I went on holiday and I had bought this massive book about Java, and I read all there is to know about Java, and everyone thought I was weird. They were all reading their rom-coms or their crime fiction. I was reading a book about Java. That's just who I am. But what I found was when you've got those textbooks is that you then kind of sit at your computer, and I don't know if some of you have done this, and you kind of go, right, chapter 1, install the right programs, and then it doesn't work. Like the textbook was written using a slightly different version. They were using a different style of computer. And so you kind of fall over right at the first hurdle, and it's just really kind of discouraging, and it's just frustrating. And you want to kind of get going on something that's interesting. And with the advent of AI, I feel there's no better time at the moment to really start learning how to program, or at least learning what the concepts of programming is all about. And you can get going really quite fast. What I'm not going to do in this session is kind of explain what good programming is. I mean, it's just such a broad subject, so I hope you kind of all appreciate that. But I want to kind of show you some of the things that you can do quickly, which may actually help you with your day-to-day work. So to that end, I'm just going to start then sharing my screen. Give me a sec. I just press all the buttons. I've got this very high level, very quickly created PowerPoint presentation. As you can see, no expense spared on this one, but then that's what ASC Labs is all about. So just to run through, I'm going to do a little intro, which I've just done, and then we're going to kind of get going. We're going to try it out. We're going to actually build a simple web app using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, which they may all be letters that you've never heard of before or don't really understand. That doesn't matter. Then we're going to try and do the same thing, but in a Python application. We're going to talk briefly about how to then save your work in a kind of a responsible way. And then the last thing is just kind of learning more. At any point, just put a question in the chat. Neil, I'm going to nominate you to kind of just keep an eye on whether there's any useful things which need my attention, because I'm going to be looking at one of the 4 screens which I've got in front of me. Also part of my personal experience is that I used to be a training and development consultant many years ago in kind of quite a technical role. And we used to talk about something called the Kolb learning cycle. And it's kind of this. And the idea of kind of good learning is to kind of get into this loop as much as you can. So some of you have different kind of learning styles about how you want to take in information. Some of you are very happy reading a book. Some of you just want to jump straight in. Someone wants to know I want to know the real experience and how to pragmatically do this and why is it going to help me. And some people just like going for a walk after they've learned something and reflecting on what they've learned. So these kind of different learning styles all kind of come into this thing called the Kolb learning life cycle. And so I'm just going to kind of briefly cover that just so that we can see where this fits in how we can learn to program. So we're going to first start off with this kind of experiencing thing. So we're going to use the AI to kind of generate us a real life thing. So we're going to get it to build an app for us, which is kind of relevant to us. And after this session, you can build this to do anything you like. So I'm going to do a very simple example. If you've got a particular interest, you can go that way. Then we're going to kind of look into, I'm getting all these little notifications popping up now, into the reflecting. So we're going to look at what the AI has created for us and kind of get into it. And then we've got the kind of the thinking part. We're going, well, what does this mean as we kind of go through the code which has been created? Why has it done that? And kind of really get into the nitty gritty detail. And then the experimentation part of, well, what happens if I change this? Does it break? Why does it break? And then we then go back into this kind of cycle again. So when you're learning something, it's good to kind of think about these different stages of how you can get through. So hopefully that's all okay. So then to get set up with this, again, this is the best slide you'll see all day. I'm kind of narrowing down. There's like a whole plethora of different ways that you can get into programming. This is where I'm going to start because I think it's a good grounding. So there's Microsoft released their what they call an IDE, interactive development environment called Visual Studio Code, and I suppose it's kind of like the standard. If you're into programming, using Visual Studio Code is kind of a good place to start. But it also looks quite complicated. So I'll try and get into the detail of how that works as we go through. You'll also probably need to install Python, and Python 3 is kind of the latest version, and have that installed on your computer. So that's kind of a free download. You may have it already installed on your computer, you may not. But I'm also not going to go through the installation process in this talk. Then I use a pro subscription to Claude Code. This costs me £20 or $20 a month. And I use Claude because I find it currently is probably the best one for programming at the moment. It's so useful and it's so powerful. And even the most complicated things it seems to understand at the moment. As an example, I had a friend who was doing one of those psychometric tests where you have to, I don't know, they give you kind of really quite a complex business challenge where it's like, oh, so and so is doing this on this day, and then you've got to come up with the schedule and say, hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. And he was going through it and he was spending like 5-6 minutes, and he was quite a smart guy. And I thought, I wonder if Claude could figure this out. So I took a picture with my phone, sent it to Claude. Within a couple of seconds, it had worked out with showing workings how it's kind of working through that problem, and it gave the right answer at the end. And it was kind of just scary about how good it's getting. So it's kind of a useful thing to have, but it's also, don't use it blindly. And I think we all know about the dangers of using AI without thinking about it. And then the final thing to think about with programming is something called GitHub. GitHub is a place where you can save your code. So think of it as a place where when you're done, you can hit save and it sends it to GitHub. The really good thing about GitHub is that if you want to try something out with your code base, you can kind of separate it off as in what they call a separate branch. See if it works. If it does, you can merge it back into your main file. If you don't like it, you can just throw it away. Again, I'm not going to get really into the details of GitHub. It's almost like another session if you want to kind of get more detailed into it. Hopefully all that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about the kind of hit list of things? People familiar with the terms? Visual Studio is probably the main one. Are people familiar with that? Maybe not. I'll just run with it and see what happens. Cool. So Visual Studio, when you open it for the very first time, looks like this. So as I mentioned before, it's a free download from Microsoft, and this is what kind of pops up when you open it for the first time. So what we have here, so let's just close that for now. It kind of looks quite techy and quite geeky from the start, so it's a little bit kind of scary. But what we'll do is, first of all, we'll go to this Explorer thing, and we'll just what we call open a folder. So it's like where we're going to store our files that we're going to work with. So let's do that. And I'm just going to kind of navigate to where my files are. I'm showing you all my secrets. So where are we? So I'm just going, I've created a folder here called ASC Labs Training, and I'm going to start off with one called Simple Web App. So I'm going to select that folder, and yes, I trust all the authors. That's very good. And it's just given me the opening of that folder, but there's nothing in that folder at the moment, so there's not much to talk about. The other thing which I'm then going to do is down the side here, there's kind of a search button. That's kind of useless because we've got nothing in there at the moment. This one's the source control. So that's the thing I mentioned about GitHub earlier. The next one is run and debug. We don't need to think about that at the moment because we've got nothing to do. And the next one is extensions. And so this is where a little bit of the magic happens. And as you can see, there's a large number of things which have kind of popped up here. And this is where you can, depending on what you want to do in your kind of programming world, you can pick which extension you want to join. So top of the list, as you kind of expect these days, is Python. It's had 203 million downloads. So as you can see, it's used by quite a lot of people. And there's huge things. So if you want to start writing in C, then you can download this one. If you want to do Jupyter notebooks, you can do that. There's a whole list of things. Some of them are written by people like Microsoft, and so they have this like little tick of authenticity. And if we scroll down to kind of the bottom a little bit, you'll get people who have written their own personal ones. And so there are some like little helpers that you can get. So you may find that, you know, some random programmer out there has written something that really helps you, but also you just want to check that is it kind of legit in the typical marketplace fashion when you're using any new app. So just bear that in mind. What we're going to do first, I'm not going to do the Python one. We're going to go straight into using a Claude one. So there is a little app here for Claude. And as you can see, this has had 4.3 million downloads, this particular thing. So I'm just going to hit the install button. And it kind of comes up straight away with this kind of, this is how you use this extension, which is really nice and really useful. And I'm just going to hide that one because that's the built-in one and not used. So it kind of takes you through the process of how it works. And what you'll see is that we've now got this little Claude icon at the top here, which we can press, and we now have Claude. And so you can go, hello. Ooh, don't know why I'm writing in caps. Hopefully it doesn't mind me shouting. And it's kind of like you're working in your AI chatbot, which we're all probably quite used to. And then it kind of talks you through, you can chat with things, and you've got the ability to go back to past conversations and things like that. So we just hit mark done on that. And what the kind of the power of using is there any browser options? I'll come to that in a minute, Alex. So what we have here is, and what's so powerful about Visual Studio and then also the AI integration within it, is that it can do a lot for you almost automatically, which is kind of terrifying in a little way. And I will show you exactly what I mean. So here is something I prepared earlier. So in here, I'm just writing down, hopefully you can see that. So hi, I'd like to create a simple web app that allows me to upload a CSV with columns, category, subcategory, date, price, and quantity. I want the app to be a single HTML page. The user will be prompted to open a CSV file. On load, it will display the average price and total quantity for each category. So it's got no data at this point. I have no idea what it's really doing. And then we hit go. And then it kind of starts thinking about what it's doing. And it's actually, what it's doing now is checking to see what I've got in this folder already. So am I already building on an existing application, or am I starting from fresh? So it's done its quick test. It's run some bash script, and boom, it's created a new file for me, and I'm going to say, yep, I want you to do that. And it's still thinking about it, but you can see kind of what it's generated really quite quickly. So here it's gone, right, I've created this thing called index HTML. What it does is it allows you to select a CSV file, pass in a category, price and quantity, and does all the stuff that we kind of hope to do. And what's quite nice about it, and why I said put it all in a single HTML, is that it requires no servers or anything to run it. So we can run it all from our own personal desktops if we want to, and I can actually share it here, and you'll all be able to run it. So it doesn't need to be uploaded anywhere. It's not going to store the files anywhere. So it's quite a powerful kind of technique if you just need something quick. So let's have a quick look at it, because again, we're just going to experience it. So open in Breuilly File Explorer. So here it's created this kind of file here. So, and then on this page, oops, if I put that, sorry, too many screens. It's created this. So it's then asking me to upload a CSV file, but I don't have a CSV file yet. So it's kind of a little bit tricky of what I need it to do. 1 sec. So in good AI world, I went to ChatGPT and said, hey ChatGPT, can you just create me some dummy data set for these columns of category, subcategory, date, price and quantity? And it's created me this dummy data set. And it's like, brilliant, thank you very much. So I've saved that as a CSV file. In true Blue Peter style, I'm just going to drag it in here. So here you can see what that CSV file looks like. And then what we really want to do is see what it looks like when we upload it in here. So I'm going to click on here, and I've got too many things open. Okay, so here's my little web app, and I'm just going to open that now. And boom, it's taken that, it's analyzed the data, it's given me the categories, it's given me the average price, and it's given me the total quantity. So it's like, cool, that's quite a cool thing to do. Like even just straight out of the box, even if we're not trying to learn to program, we've got something that does something very quite nifty quite quickly. And you can make these all really quite complicated if you need to. So the next thing we want to do is actually kind of go, well, how has it done this? Because we're trying to actually learn how to code. So if we then go back to our HTML, we can then see how HTML is structured. And I don't know if you guys have got experience working with HTML or anything like that, but I'll try and give you the kind of the overview of how things are structured. So here's our kind of HTML tags at the top, and then it kind of goes through. We've got the title in there. It's got the styles here. So this is defining kind of what the fonts are, what the color schemes are, and this is this text here looks a little bit different to the text here. It uses these kind of curly brackets rather than kind of the angled brackets. So this is what is called CSS, and I'm not going to go into the detail, but it's there. And then here you've got the HTML body going underneath here. So it's doing some basic things here, like it's saying, well, here's our little upload area. It's got the click here to upload a CSV file. And then further down here, it's then laying out what the table looks like. And then I suppose the magic happens in the bit underneath here. And this is where it's writing in JavaScript, and it's embedding JavaScript in here. And so I'm not really a JavaScript expert at all, to any sense, but it kind of, you can then see how it's structured. And because we've got AI here, we can then go, we can ask it questions. So if we don't really understand something, we can then say, what does this mean? So you can see that there's kind of a number of different functions in here. So there's this function called process CSV. So, and then there's this event listener here. And so we can actually go, right, well, let's just highlight that and go, I'm new to JavaScript. What does this mean? I have experience in Excel, if that helps. Great question. It's always very positive about its responses. But then it will kind of start to kind of help you understand what it's doing at each step of the way. So going back to my analogy, which I talked about before, where I was like trying to learn how to do programming with JavaScript from my big textbook. This is now answering my specific question in a context which I understand, and so I can get going with it a lot faster. And so it's incredibly powerful to kind of help you on this journey. And if you think about, I haven't actually really done anything except for download Visual Studio and plug in Claude, and now I'm away, and I've got this kind of whole world starting to open up. So we've done that, and then we've got our little table of data, which is really nice. But what you may want to do is go, well, if I wanted to put a chart in this, how would I do it? So again, I don't really know. I don't know how to do charts in JavaScript. So it's something I want to learn about because I do a lot of data analysis. So it'd be a good thing to learn. So we just then ask it another question. If I'd like to add a chart underneath the table, can you create it for me? And so off it goes, and it starts building that for us. And what's quite nice in the way that it works here is that it's showing you each step of the way as it's building it. So the first thing here it's doing is introducing this library called chart.js. And so it's like, okay, that's interesting. Not seen that before, or if you're doing this for the first time. And so you can kind of then start to go, okay, let's put that in. What else is it going to do? Okay, it's going to add in this new style about how to define how to do charts. So it's added that to that CSS area. You go, right, that's good. So let's add that in. And then it's going to next add in the section within our HTML of where the chart's going to sit. And it is underneath the table that we requested earlier. So we hit yes on that one. And it will then put some script in here in the JavaScript section to actually populate that chart. So here it's calling this function called render chart. Here's the render chart, and then we can see what it's actually doing. And hit yes, and away we go. Done. Thank you very much. So it's done that. So if I then go back to my CSV analyzer that it created for us and hit refresh. So it's still referencing my little section here. And then I'm going to upload that data set again. And now I've got a nice, pretty little chart underneath it. It's, ooh, Alex, I saw you. And it does things like hover over, which is quite nice. And it'll tell you what the details are and things like that within it. And so it's just like, wow, this is actually really quite cool. So, I mean, you could get to a point where you could send your clients the CSV file and say, hey, clients, if you want to just see what's in this without kind of getting into the detail, run this HTML, which I've enclosed with it. And then you can run it and see the visual parts to it. And so with all of this, we've still got the ability to kind of go into the code and go, what does that mean? Why have you done this? So this picture here, which I mentioned at the top, where it's introduced this library, you can ask it about it. So I'm new to this. What is a What is this, I suppose? What is this? And so it kind of gives you some more kind of detail about, what's it going through and how's it got to this stage. So it's really kind of like pragmatic learning to help you understand how to do these things in a kind of really narrow thing of what I'm interested in. And so, yeah, it's starting to break it down and help us understand how it's working. Cool. So I'm not going to go into much more detail on this little web app. I'll just see if I can show you one I prepared earlier where I took it a little bit further than this one. So let me just open it up. So in my prep for this, I extended it a little bit further by also allowing you to put a little filtering in here as well. So that I mentioned that I've got a category and a subcategory, and then it kind of builds up the next ones as well. So, and that's purely just by kind of working with the AI and working with the Visual Studio Code to help me get on the way. Cool. How do you feel about that? Nothing new, or actually quite interesting? Answer in the chat if you will. Is this shareable with others, Alex? Yes, it is. I can send it to you now if you want. I can send it afterwards, or you can do exactly what I've done following the video afterwards and do exactly the same thing. And you also, sorry.
No, yep. What I meant was, like, can you share it for others to use the interface, itself, or is there another step to make that sort of published?
Yeah, let me see if I can actually put it in the chat. It's not letting me because I don't know, not trusted or something. But I could just put these two files in an email and then you can run it exactly the same way. Because the way that we've done this HTML, it's not using any kind of server-side interactions, or it's not connecting to any databases. It's just working purely in the browser. This kind of way of working is quite limited, so it's not going to give you the full functionality of like Facebook or something, because that's a lot more advanced. But there's a lot of good stuff that you can just do actually within a browser. And it's a session which I'll be doing later in the year, where you can do some really quite advanced things a bit further down the line. You asked if there are any kind of browser-based alternatives to Visual Studio. There are. For doing what we've just done in like HTML, I'm sure there's loads out there. With Python, Google have got one called Colab, where you can actually start writing Python. Cool. Your question, Dawn, I'm just reading that through. So I have to admit, you don't have 100% of attention. Oh man, I really want to get stuck in. So is it secure? Does it upload our stuff or keep it private? So what I've just shared with you doesn't go any further than your browser. So it just runs in your browser. It's not being uploaded to anywhere. And we can also check with Claude if you don't believe me, but you do trust AI.
Although presumably, Andrew, if you were to write like an idea for something that was really like proprietary information and send that to Claude to ask it to program that, like that idea is kind of being sent somewhere, is not necessarily secure in that sense.
Correct. Yes. But I think if you're using this for learning how to program, then it doesn't really matter. And
yes.
Anyone else that hacks your account and finds out what's going on will be quite bored by what you're doing. But yeah, good question. I'd be very sensitive about putting in. So here I've put in that dummy data set. I for sure would not put in my client's data in here and get Claude to analyze it, because it would if you told it to, and it can. So you have to be careful in that respect. What I'm going to do now is move on to the Python version of doing this. The thing about kind of doing it all in HTML and JavaScript is that it's quite tough. I think I find JavaScript a bit weird. You also then have to know HTML. You also then have to know CSS, and it's all kind of a little bit mad. And then you're quite limited to complex things because it has to be written in JavaScript. So what we're going to do now is do a new window in here. So let's just close that, and then I'm going to open a new folder. Let's find my folder. Right. Okay, so I'm going to do one now called a, let's close that again, Streamlit. So Streamlit is again, kind of a package from Python, which allows you to build something similar to what we've just done in the previous app. It allows you to create almost like dashboards with data really quickly. So what we're going to do now is, because I haven't loaded in Python yet, is put Python in here. So let's install that. So it's done that. So open project folder. I've actually already done this bit. So I hit my Streamlit app. So that's done. I'm then going to create a Python file. So it takes us through this little journey. So here it's actually created that file for us. And if I save that, so I'm just going to call it main.py. And so it's created that little file for us here. Now the next part is kind of creating the environment for Python. So this is where you tell it which version of Python you want it to use. And then what it will do is kind of create a little bubble around your project so that it's kind of contained within it. So one of the dangers, which you may have come across in other things, is almost just like the versions of tools that you're using. So let's say you're using, I'll try and do it with Excel because everyone knows Excel. Let's say you've got something which is written in Excel 97, let's say, and it only works in Excel 97. But then you also want to do other work which uses the latest version of Excel. What you don't want to do is upgrade Excel and then it deletes the Excel 97 because you then won't be able to do it. So this kind of environment thing allows you to kind of put a bubble around your work. And so you can have different versions of applications and different versions of libraries within it. So it sounds quite complicated, but it's not really, but it's very well worth doing. So here you've kind of hit the create environment and you've got two options. Hit the first one. And then it also says what version of Python do you want to use. I've got a few versions, so I'm just going to hit 3.12. And then it's kind of whirling away. It's creating my environment for me and setting me up ready to do things in Python. Let's just put in who has used Python. If you give a little thumbs up to that comment, if you would, if you've used Python before, just so I can get a little kind of weird survey. We are the ASC after all. Okay, so it's kind of created my little virtual environment, and you'll see it's got this little .venv file folder at the top. So that's done, and it's then asking us to kind of run through this, but I'm going to skip that part because I want to get to the fun stuff. So again, I'm going to go straight into using my little Claude button here, and here's an example I shared earlier. So here I'm going, and very similar to the last exercise that we did, I'd like to create a simple Streamlit web app that allows me to upload a CSV with columns, category, subcategory, date, price, quantity. The user will be prompted to open a CSV, on load, it will display the average price. So pretty much the same thing we did before, but we can then see what the difference looks like writing it all in this new application. So because we're doing Python, there's a bit more kind of work to do for the code. It's not the single app version that we had before. So it did that little analysis thing. It's then going, right, you've got nothing here. So I'm going to start writing the code. So it's then written the first part of the code for us. And then you hit yes. We'll interrogate what this is all doing in a moment. What it's then noticed is that I don't actually have the libraries it needs to install this. So when we did the last application, it didn't need any libraries because it's all just using basic stuff which is available in JavaScript and online. Whilst here we need specific libraries. So there's the Streamlit library, which is the kind of the dashboarding element, and pandas. I don't know if people have heard of pandas before, but it's Python and data science, I think, is what it actually stands for. And so it needs to install that as well. So we're going to do that. Yes, thank you. There's a panda. So it's going to install those two things. Now, from a kind of a geeky technical perspective, these two libraries are really quite large. So they're quite heavy hitting. They come with a lot of kind of baggage because they do so many different things. So pandas is pretty much the default for any data analysis that you want, and Streamlit is a way of creating dashboards. And so there's quite a lot of files and things buried within them. Whilst that doesn't matter to us at the moment, it matters in two ways thinking ahead. When you want to deploy this in actually a real environment, you've got to have maybe 500 megabytes of space to put this thing. And so it's quite a chunky bit of software. So if you start talking to kind of more geeky developers, they'll go, well, it's too bloated, it's too fat. You need something a lot thinner and leaner. But as a proof of concept tool, it's super powerful. So it's done it. So it's then saying, oh, to run this, you need to run this little bit of code. And so it's given me like a nice little copy thing here. And I'm just going to put a new terminal in here and run it. So it told me what to write and do that. And what's quite nice about all these things is that if you can't get it to run, you can ask the AI again. So it's almost like having a programming partner with you side by side and go, how do I run this? Like literally, what do I press? Which kind of gets you along the way. So what that has now done is created this, which looks quite similar to what we had before. So now I'm going to browse for my files. Let me just get the right thing. So I'm going to load that data set up again. And now it's punched it in there. So it's done pretty much the same thing, which is kind of fairly cool. So it's done it. Lovely. And if you kind of Google Streamlit applications, you can see the kind of whole plethora of things. You can do maps, you can do charts, you can do all sorts, you can do advanced filtering, you can do loads of stuff. You name it, they've done it. So this is by far the simplest thing we've done. But what you can see if we go back to the code to kind of learn how we could have done this, it's done it in 20 lines of code. So it's giving us a interactive kind of dashboard with 20 lines of code, which is kind of quite incredible. If you then compare it to what we had before, which was, if I still got it open, yeah, something that looked quite a lot messier. So as a proof of concept tool, it's really nice. And the other advantage of Python is that it's kind of fairly easy to read. So even if you don't really know Python, you could probably walk through this and go, okay, I understand what it's doing at each stage. So here it's importing the Streamlit library. Here it's importing the pandas library. It's then giving me a title by doing st title. So then I want it to prompt for a upload file mechanism. So, okay, that kind of makes sense. Then there's like a condition to say, well, if a file has been uploaded, then do something. So that's what this part is doing. It's first of all going to load the CSV into memory. They call it data frames in pandas. So that's that. It's then going to look for the required columns, which we defined. And it's put some error logic in here. So if I uploaded a CSV which didn't have those files, those column names in it, it will go, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Else it's going to create a summary view. So it's going to take the data table that we created. It's going to group by category. It's going to aggregate in two ways, the average price and total quantity. It's by doing that, by doing the price column and mean, doing that by quantity and sum. Reset index is kind of like a weird thing. I don't understand that. So we'll ask AI about that a bit later. And then it's going to give me a little subheader and then show me what that data frame summary looks like. And so all of a sudden it's created that so fast and without having to do too much. And as I mentioned before, this is where we can really start to learn more about how to use programming. So like I mentioned, that reset index, I don't know what that means. So let's highlight that bit of code. I don't understand dot reset index. What does that do? And so it will help us understand why it's doing these things and going through the detail. And so any question that you have or any level of programming that you have, you can then ask it questions to explain more. I mean, it's like, what a time to be alive to learn programming. I think it's just unreal. And in the same way that we could expand on this in the other one, we could, I don't know, put some more advanced things in, and we could, for demo presses, I'm demoing Streamlit. Can you create some advanced features of this data? So let's see what it can do. See what happens, and then it gives us more things to kind of learn about. Yeah, it's kind of staggering. So if I come back to my kind of loose agenda, let me just check to where we are. So we've done the intro, we've done get it going, trying it out, we've done a simple web app, we've done a simple Python application. Saving your work, I'm kind of running out of time, if I'm completely honest. I've got 10 minutes to go, and then there's learning more. So the saving your work, if you are going to kind of continue on this, the next thing to do really is to then, let's just also accept this and send it on its way, is here on that source control button. And it kind of guides you through. And so feel free to start pressing these buttons once you've set up your GitHub account. And in the same way, you can talk to AI to say, how do I publish this to GitHub? And it will talk you through the steps, and it can even automate those processes for you and push it to GitHub and do all those things. So that's that part. Let's just hit go on all of these things and see what happens. If we then think about the learning more section, so I think what all this does now with AI is that learning the kind of the syntax of how to create a data frame in pandas is almost not as important anymore, in my view. What's important is knowing the kind of the architecture of what makes a good application. So if someone said to me, can you mock out a quick proof of concept of a dashboard, I'll probably go straight to Streamlit. If someone says, oh, can I do some database engineering on some data, I'd go to something called DuckDB. And so having awareness of all the different tools and techniques and things that are out there is really powerful. So if you start to learn those kind of concepts, you can then go, well, how can I best use the AI and do the code? There's also the element of there's a big difference between doing things like we're doing here to kind of learn a few skills and then putting it into a production environment which your client is going to use with real data and the sensitivity around it. And that's where you start to kind of, you really want to make sure that you've brought someone on board who knows what they're doing, who knows how to clamp this down to make sure that you're not opening up client data to the whole world. So that's really important to bear in mind. Right, Claude's still thinking away. Let's just get going with that. Let's see what crazy things it's come up with. Okay. It's done all sorts of stuff. So it's got quite a lot in here now. Like the code is quite long. But let's see what that actually looks like in our app. Let me just close this down and rerun it. So here we are. Let's load that data set. Okay, now it's created something a little bit more interactive and got the full headlines of what's going on. So we've got these big numbers at the top giving us our summary info. It's got some little tab sections here. Wow, that's quite cool. So it's now summarizing that data in a number of different ways. It's really kind of showing off what it can do. And then we've also got the actual raw data if you just want to see what it says in the table. These sections here, it looks like they're working as little filters, which are also interactive. It's putting the percentage change from it all. I mean, it's just mad, like what it has actually kind of produced in a very short amount of time. We've got a date range filter in here as well. I mean, it's crazy. So we've got about 7 minutes left where I'd love to kind of answer any further questions that you guys have. So please fire away. And you can come off mute if you want to. It's fine. Or everyone's doing something else.
I mean, I always think it's really inspiring to see what you can do with vibe coding. So thank you, Andrew. I was just going to ask, like, when you sort of touched on this a little bit, but like, when would you use Python for a particular application? When do you think you would use like JavaScript and make, you know, more of like an HTML application? Like, what guides your decision as to what type of code to write the thing in?
Yeah, good question. I think pretty much my go-to is always something Python, just because it's a bit more scalable in the future. But it's also my natural go-to. I would really struggle to write JavaScript from scratch, if I'm completely honest. And so Python's more my happy place. And then you can do a lot more with Python. So here we've done what we call a Streamlit app. But if you wanted to create actually a repeatable API, which did the same thing, then you can write that in Python as well. And so it's just a bit more extendable going forward. If you want to, another example is if you want to put it into, let's say Amazon, and you want it to run in the cloud, it's really easy to go from Python to putting it into the Amazon cloud. But doing the JavaScript thing and putting the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, it's trickier. So the one I showed earlier is great for just real simple tasks. And from a survey perspective, let's say you've got a weird question type where I don't know, it's like a dot plot, and you have to do the respondents clicked buttons, and so you need to kind of do some manipulation on the XY coordinates and all that kind of stuff, and then display it on a picture. So you can actually write that in that HTML JavaScript way quite quickly as a one-off little tool, which is quite handy to use. But if it's kind of overkill to do that in Python because it comes with all the heavyweight overheads with it, if that makes sense. A question from Alex. There are tons of paid courses and paid communities to learn this stuff. Have you come across anything useful and worth investing in, both time and money? Personally, right now, I would invest in get yourself a $20 Claude license, plug it into Visual Studio and go where you're interested. It's like having the biggest textbook along the way and then having someone who's incredibly patient and who will put up with all of your questions and asking the same thing several times in the same way. And they'll keep helping you. So personally, that's what I would do, especially if you're on a kind of a bit of a limited budget. But in the same way, there is, if you find the right person to train you, it helps a lot because Claude will only tell you what you ask. Cool. I didn't see the previous questions. So it looks like some of you have actually deployed stuff. Yeah. So deploying things is kind of the next stage, really. Streamlit has got this little button in this top corner which says deploy, and it kind of gives you from options to actually deploy it live, but then these will start costing you money, and then you also have to be careful of where you're actually putting it. So it's something to explore. The other option is that you could just ask Claude, how would I deploy this? And it will ask you questions about where do you want to put it? Do you have an environment already where you want to put this? And ask you questions along that way. But I think it's more at that point is where you want to start making sure you're doing the right thing rather than just saying, I put it in the cloud. It's just like, where? I don't know. So yeah, be careful. Good. Any other questions from the group?
I have what might be a very silly question. Is there, because you said to get Claude Code subscription, is that different to the Claude sort of, I forget what it's called, like Pro version, or it's just like you're interacting with the same license but
Yeah,
via a different tool?
It's the Claude Pro. Yeah, sorry, I've used the wrong terminology. But yeah, that's what I've started using. And there's other ones, I've got ChatGPT as well. That's kind of useful for different skills. And in 3 months' time, there'll be a new one which will be different and better or cheaper or that kind of stuff. So yeah, it'll be out of date in 3 months' time, which sadly this is all limited to the dev team internally. Boo. Boo. Yeah. I think I put a quote in the start of this advert, and it was from the head of the MI5, and it was how it's so important to be aware of how Python and programming languages are written and how data structures are written, and it's the kind of the new norm. And I think for it to be locked down to just dev teams is quite sad and unnecessary, because I think if all of us were able to embrace some of the things that this is doing, it would speed up our productivity no end. So hassle your dev team. Or maybe it's not the dev team made the decision, but see if you can get Visual Studio installed.
Yeah, I'll try. I definitely try. Yeah, but I've inquired about Claude Code, but yeah, I think a more cautious approach has been taken. I do have some leverage, but yeah, I'll try.
Yeah, there are some language models that you can use on your own computer, like you download them, but you need a pretty good computer to get the best out of them. Yeah, you need a. I'm sitting on quite a powerful machine, and that struggles sometimes. But yeah, there are ways of doing it securely if they are really concerned in that respect. Cool. We're at 12 o'clock. So I think that's. I'm not going to cover anything else new. Does anybody have any last questions before we go for the day? I'm going to say there's a no. Thank you everyone for attending. If you enjoyed this, then let us know. Come along to the next one. Tell your friends. Hey, how great the ASC is. We've got a conference coming up in May, which is all about how change is upon us. So as an industry, we're going to go through some crazy change at the moment. So if your business is going through a lot of change, it'd be lovely to get your perspectives either as a speaker or coming into the audience and sharing your thoughts. So that's in May. Check it out on the website if you want to find out more. Thanks very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Bye.